If you want to be on the show, 800-688-9522, 800-688-9522. And when you call, you will hear the kind and compassionate tones of himself, the producer of this show, and the call screener, and the guy that throws pencils at me. He is the Baron of the Board, the Sultan of the South, the Earl of Engineering. He is the man whose self-approval rating is at an all-time high, the Count of Mighty Disco, John Butler, everyone.
I'm going to throw some pencils at you. I mean, look by the Prince of Pencils, the Baron of Ballistics. Oh.
But listen, John, it's a big day for us.
It absolutely is a big day for us.
We have now done it.
As of a minute and a half ago. We've done it now.
We've done it now. We have launched this show into syndication. We are now being broadcast into 5 states on 13 stations on the Truth Network. And we want to welcome everybody on the Truth Network. We're going to do a roll call here in just a minute and see all the places that we're going to. I wrote it down, John, right here on my hands. Notes? Yes, I did. Don't get excited about it. Right. But we're gonna give a shout out. But I want to tell the folks on the Truth Network who are just now listening, and folks listening on here, of course, WLAC here in Nashville on Music Row, that Sunday afternoon we're live. And you can call in 800-688-9522, particularly if you're a caregiver. Why are we doing this show? Why am I doing this show is more importantly, I guess, because I am a caregiver myself. 31 years I've been doing this, taking care of my wife through a medical nightmare. And for those of you who don't know who I am Peter Rosenberger, and I'm glad that you're listening. Thank you. And 31 years ago, I married a woman who had a broken body. She had been hurt a couple of years before I met her in a terrible car accident. And her name is Gracie, and you'll hear a lot about her and all the journey we've had. She'd had about 20 major surgeries by the time we met. It's hard to know. It's hard to count some of those things. It was a massive wreck, and they didn't think she'd live, much less ever walk again. Well, she did. But I met her. She had a lot of scars, and particularly on her legs. They had saved her legs at the time of the wreck, but they were misshapen, and she had a pretty significant limp. But just a beautiful young woman. Just don't take my word for it. Google her. I mean, I was Googling her that day. We didn't have Google back then. And then I heard her sing, and I knew I was captivated, and I was going to take care of this woman for the rest of my life. Didn't know what it meant. Didn't know anything about taking care of somebody who was broken in this way. And so I asked this girl to marry me. I said, "Wilt thou?" She wilted. And here we are 31 years later. But let me tell you what, the surgery count has soared up to now almost 80 surgeries that I can count, the major ones, and at least that same amount in smaller procedures. 80-plus doctors have treated her. Now, I'm not talking about being on call. I'm talking about treating her. 12 different hospitals, 7 different insurance companies, $10 million, both legs amputated. It's just been an ongoing nightmare of medical catastrophe. And into this journey, I've learned a few things. I'm kind of what you call the crash test dummy of caregivers. If you could fail at it, I failed at it. But I've learned a few things. I've learned a few things about life, about love, about God's provision in it. And we've been on the air here in Nashville for over 4 years. We've just had our 200th show earlier this year. And I've been working with the folks over at the Truth Network. Stu Epperson, I want to give a big shout out to Stu and all of the team there at the Truth Network, of capturing this vision. And we are the first ever show to syndicate for family caregivers. And there's 65 million of us. So this is an exciting day for us, John. And let me give you a list of the stations we're on.
Yeah, absolutely.
In my piano-playing hands, I have this list right here. WDRU AM 1030 in Durham. WDRU 105.5 in Durham, and then 105.7 in Raleigh, North Carolina. The big triangle. You ever been over the Raleigh-Durham area?
I have not. I know that's your stomping grounds, but
Well, that's North Carolina. I'm actually originally from South Carolina.
Yeah.
But I've been up there. My uncle was editor at the paper there in Durham for years, and it's a great area, great folks. And then WTRU AM 830 in Winston-Salem, in Greensboro, and then also 97.7 FM Winston-Salem.
Okay.
In Greensboro. So we got 2
Pick
stations.
Pick up some FMs, yeah.
Yeah, and 102.9 FM in High Point. My sister-in-law's from High Point, great town. They make a lot of furniture over there. I don't know if you knew that or not.
How does this help me be a better caregiver for
you? Well, you may need solid furniture. If you want solid furniture, correct. High Point is your place.
And if there's an angle, you'll find it. I love it.
WCRU AM 960 in Gastonia, Got a great friend of our family, Eddie, lives over there in Gastonia. It's a great town.
Hey, Eddie.
And 105.7 Charlotte.
Oh,
FM.
there you go.
Big town of Charlotte. And then you've got KUTR AM 20 Salt Lake. We're in Salt Lake. My brother lives about 2 hours south of there. And what a great community out there. KUTR AM, welcome. And then
so all those people on Mountain Time, you know.
They are on Mountain Time. KUTR 95.3 in Salt Lake also.
Okay.
And then we've got KTIA 99.3 in Boone and Des Moines, Iowa. And then WLES AM 590 in Richmond and WLES 97.7 also in Richmond, Virginia. So how about that? Welcome.
Well, thank you all for participating in this, and we joke around a lot, but we really do believe
extensively.
Almost exclusively.
But we are on a mission to strengthen the family caregiver, and we're so glad you're with us. And you'll be hearing, of course, a lot about this as the show progresses. John has been an integral part of this thing from day one, and he runs all the technical stuff, and it's been quite a job to get this going this week.
Well, and as thank you for the credit, there have been many other people involved in this that made it happen. That too numerous to mention. That I've made a lot of new friends over the past couple of weeks.
and I almost made some enemies because I was wearing everybody out a little bit. But it's a big deal to do this because this is being sent here from WLAC. It's going all the way over to the Truth Network headquarters in Winston-Salem, and then it's being sent out on the satellite. And a lot of people worked hard to do this, but they all believed in the message, and the message is healthy caregivers make better caregivers. And if you as a caregiver go down, what happens to your loved one? Now, you just heard the inventory of all the things that I have to deal with as a caregiver with my wife. Now, how does her life improve if I am not in a healthy place? I mean, think through that. What about you? You taking care of a grandchild, or you have a special needs child, or you're taking care of an aging parent or a spouse with a chronic illness or something. How is their life going to improve if you're not in a good place financially, physically, emotionally, spiritually? And this is what this show is all about. Again, 800-688-9522, 1-800-688-9522. We've had folks calling here with all kinds of stuff, and we love to take those calls. I remember one of the most poignant ones. I had a fellow he had just buried his wife, 40-something years, and she had Alzheimer's, and he just broke down on the show. And you know what? We let him do it. It was his time to do it. He needed the space to do it. It's my show, and if you want to call up and vent, cry, all those kinds of things, this is the place for it. If you're dealing with guilt, if you're dealing with fear, and if you're dealing with all the insanity that comes with being a caregiver. We talk about all these things, and as the show unfolds, we'll get into more and more of these things. But we speak fluent caregiver here, and we are glad you're with us. We usually have a caregiver tip every time we do the show. So today's caregiver tip, that's our caregiver tip music.
It's completely original. I promise.
Thank you very little. But today's caregiver tip, John, is one that you like a lot, and it's don't live in the wreckage of your future.
Oh, I love that quote.
We caregivers often are living so much fear of what's coming down the pike that we'll actually get ourselves torqued up about something that hasn't even happened yet.
Absolutely, because worry is it has a negative connotation, but it does have a place in that if you're thinking about something, you're probably planning for it.
Yes.
But once you get through that planning period, the worry can remain and really just tear you up.
Worry. I heard somebody say worry is praying for calamity. And I thought, but I was in church this morning and I was thinking about this. It just hit me. We've all heard the story of Jesus in Gethsemane, and he was sweating blood. All right. But now think this through. He didn't start sweating blood until he got to Gethsemane. He knew what was coming. He knew from day one. I mean, he knew before day one. He knew what was coming, but he didn't live in that place. When the time came, he dealt with the stress of it and the heartache and the concern, and then he turned it over to the will of his Father. But the sweating of blood did not just dominate his entire time on earth in his entire ministry. He knew what was coming, and yet he didn't live in the wreckage of it. And that's a model for us. We don't have to live in that wreckage either. Yeah, there's some stuff coming down our pike. We know this. If you're a caregiver of any kind, you know that there's some unpleasant things that are heading your way, but they're not here today. And today we're going to just live right here, right now, and deal with this moment and learn to be at peace with it and learn to breathe a little easier and take healthy steps and trust that, the same God that is with us today will be with us when those things happen. And that's how we do it. And it's just not any more. I wish I could say it was more complicated than that, and then people would think I was really smart. But we know that ship has sailed. And so that's today's caregiver tip, and we always have that, is don't live in the wreckage of your future. What was that?
That was the caregiver tip sound.
That was the caregiver.
Didn't you hear it?
Today's. There's something wrong with you. All right, so that's what we got going on, and we're going to have. By the way, we will have a few hitches today because our whole clock has been having to rework on this, and that's a little behind the scenes about what we're doing. But we just want you to be patient with us. 800-688-WLAC, 800-688-9522 if you want to be on the show. This section is brought to you by Caregivers by Whole Care. Caregivers by Whole Care, I trust them with my life. I trust them with my wife. They're the ones who help me take care of Gracie when I'm here. 615-298-9201. 615-298-9201. This is Peter Rosenberger. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show for caregivers, about caregivers, hosted by a caregiver. I am Peter Rosenberger, bringing you 3 decades of experience to help you stay strong and healthy. That's not 1 decade. That's not 2 decades. That's 3 decades, and we are glad you're with us. 800-688-9522. 800-688-9522. And as always, I love what the Count of Mighty Disco brings us with September.
Oh, yeah.
It is September. It's a great time to be in Tennessee, by the way.
Oh, speaking of which, my tags are expired on my car now.
Well,
we'll be at the end of the month.
We're glad we could be of help to you on that one, John.
I need reminders for things.
If you want to be on the show, 800-688-9522. Maybe you are struggling with this. Maybe you are living in the wreckage of your future. That's our caregiver tip for today. Don't live in the wreckage of your future. And maybe that's where we're going sometimes as caregivers. We see what's coming down the road, and we're torqued up about it. And if so, give us a shout. Let's talk about it and why that's an issue for you today and what we can do to help that. Because let me tell you something. If you're feeling it, we're discussing it. And other caregivers are as well, too. We're all dealing with the same thing. See, caregivers deal with 3 I's, where we lose our independence, we become isolated, and we lose our identity. And this is why I do the show, because of this isolation that we deal with as caregivers. And we are so cut off from things. And so we thought, okay, let's do a radio show. And, I have the hair for TV, but I have the face for radio. So that's why we do radio.
And bless you for it.
Let's not inflict too much on the listening public. So we're glad you're with us. Hey, listen, John, real quick here. I had to order some pylons this week.
Okay. I'm hanging with you. You haven't stirred me astray so far. But
give me time. Ordered some pylons this week because I was talking to the clinic over in West Africa. We work with Ghana Health Service in the country of Ghana and West Africa.
And who's we?
Our organization, Standing with Hope. See, many years ago when Gracie gave up her legs and became a double amputee, she said, you know what, I want to provide quality prosthetic limbs to my fellow amputees, and I want to use that as a platform to share the gospel with them. And so we've been doing that. And for over a dozen years, we send over lots and lots of supplies, and then we send over teams, and we teach and equip local workers on how to build prosthetic limbs for their own people. And that gives us an enormous platform to share the gospel, and it really is a quite meaningful thing that we've been able to participate in. I told somebody the other day, said, we got so many people standing over there, it looks like a Benny Hinn crusade being played backwards. And they kind of looked at me with that, that look.
Yeah.
Says, really? Did you just say that?
Like, come on.
And so
it's like you can tell that Peter is a father because of the quality of the jokes that he brings to the table.
Well, or the lack thereof. But part of that is we have a prosthetic limb recycling outreach. What we do, we collect used prosthetic limbs from all over the country, and they go to a local prison here in the Nashville area in Middle Tennessee, where inmates volunteer to disassemble these things for us. And we will strip the limbs down all the way down, sometimes to the screw level. And we can recycle so much of it, the foot, the knee, the pylon, the screws, the adapters, all those things. And then we'll make a brand new socket over in West Africa and use these recycled parts to build a custom fit limb for an amputee over there. And so I just got a call from the clinic, and they said they need some longer pylons for above knee amputees, because you need to have, as you can imagine, a longer pylon. And so we got to go over there, and I'll go to the prison here. It's run by Core Civic, and they help manage all these prisons around the country, and they have a lot of faith-based programs that they do to help reduce recidivism. You know, when the people leave the prison, you don't want them to come back. And faith-based programs are a big part of that, and ours is one of them, and we are so thrilled to partner with them. This is corecivic.com, and these inmates have to earn the right to do it, by the way, John. They don't just say, hey, come and hang out in the room with a bunch of power tools.
Right. I understand that there's certain levels of
vetting.
That go along with
lots
this.
of vetting. And,
but you end up really helping those guys out a lot as well.
It's been a great program over the years, and they love doing it. And I've had folks over the years tell me things such as guys that participated, the inmates, would say things like, I never even thought of people with disabilities until I started working this program. I never even thought of somebody, dealing with this kind of stuff.
I never used my hands for something positive. Never used my hands
positive. Yeah. And I think that's so rewarding. And I love doing that. And so the folks over at Core Civic run a great organization over there with the limb recycling thing. And I'm very happy to work with these guys. And it's just deeply meaningful. I don't know if you ever spend much time in a prison ministry and going into a prison and engaging with folks, but it gets very real in there. My parents, I don't know if I'd ever told you this or not, John, but my parents have had a death row ministry for years.
I think I heard about that. It was a couple of years ago that you mentioned it, so it kind of slipped out of memory.
And just deeply meaningful to do that. And, particularly when you get guys who own what they did, they own it, they realize what's happening, and they're working to turn their lives around. And you want to help and participate in that as much as possible. So anyway, I had to order some pylons because I need them, and so we're getting some of those. And so if you around the country, if you know somebody who has a used prosthetic limb that they're not using, maybe the family member has passed away or the child has outgrown it, we always need pediatrics. Please send it. Go to standingwithhope.com. Standing with Hope is one of the big sponsors of this show, and see what we do there. We have the caregiver outreach, we have the prosthetic limb outreach, and so standingwithhope.com, and you can see all the things that are going on. But we would love to get a leg up on someone.
Don't be a heel, Peter.
I just get my foot in the door. So anyway,
toe the line, buddy. All right,
toe the line. So that's part of what we do here, and you'll hear a lot about that going forward. And I'm just very grateful to the Truth Network. We've got more to come in the next half hour, but I just want to again tell you this: nobody's ever done this before. A radio show syndicated now for family caregivers. I mean, who'd have thunk? Well, we thunk it because I know how needed it is for me. I know those dark and lonely moments for years, and I went in some dark places. And as you get to know me, you'll know more of my story. There's a reason they call me the crash test dummy of caregivers, and I've got the scars to prove it. But I also learned over the years that it's important to listen to people with scars because you can avoid the scars that they got. And I've made a lot of mistakes, but you don't have to. I've learned a lot of things about God's provision and saying, and somebody told me the other day, I had a lot of wisdom. Well, that's a backhanded compliment. What that means is, congratulations, you failed so much that you learned what not to do.
Experience is the name we give our mistakes.
Yeah, this is me, and we're not a there kind of show. We're a, hey, don't go down there. That's a bad place. And we want to do what is necessary, what we can to help you stay healthy and strong as you take care of someone who's not. It's important. You're important. And we're glad you're with us. 800-688-9522. We'll be right back with New York Times bestselling author Jane Heller. She's here to talk about her new book. She was taking care of her mother with Alzheimer's. And the book is titled, You Better Not Die or I'll Kill You. And I love that title. That is just really funny. So, hey, we'll be right back. This is Peter Rosenberger. This is the nation's #1 show for the family caregivers, and we're glad you're with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show for caregivers, about caregivers, hosted by a caregiver. I am Peter Rosenberger, bringing you 30 years of experience to help you stay strong and healthy as you take care of someone who is not. And we are taking it to the streets. We're welcoming the Truth Network on our first ever syndicated show now. And we're thrilled that you're with us all across the country. If you're just now tuning in Durham, Raleigh, Greensboro, High Point, Gastonia, Charlotte, Salt Lake City, Des Moines, Richmond, welcome to, and those of you listening here in Nashville, we're here Music Row Live, 800-688-9522, and if you're streaming on iHeart across the country and into Canada, I know John is big up in Prince Edward Island.
Oh yeah. My fame is bleeding over into Nova Scotia at this point. And it's so great.
I got a friend listening up there right now that I was talking to, and so she's listening. I want to give a shout out to her too. So, in Nova Scotia. So, listen, thank you all for joining us. We always have, I like to have very interesting guests on this show, John. You know that. But this lady has written a book that the title alone said, I got to have this lady on the show.
I was going to say, she's not going to make us look better by comparison, is she? She's going to look better than us.
No, she's going, listen, she's wonderful. And she's a New York Times bestselling author. She's written all kinds of romantic comedies that have been optioned for film and TV and all kinds of stuff she's done. But then she got into this journey as a caregiver, because we all do. If you love somebody, you'll be one. If you live long enough, you'll need one. And Jane Hiller is with us. She's calling in from, you're from New York, right, Jane?
I'm in Connecticut.
Connecticut, close enough. And your new book is titled, I love the title, You'd Better Not Die or I'll Kill You, a caregiver survival guide to keeping you in good health and good spirits. And that alone wins you a spot in one of my favorite all-time titles of the world. And now this is real for you. Your mother has dementia. Your husband has Crohn's disease. You're dealing with this reality. Let's talk about that and tell us your journey a little bit. Then we'll get into the book.
Okay, fine. Yeah, this came about because of my husband. Michael has had Crohn's disease since he was 11. But backing up from that, I grew up in a family of illness. So my dad died when I was 6 years old. He had brain cancer. In the 1950s, Peter, nobody told kids anything about illness. They certainly didn't mention the C word. So we were all kind of kept in the dark, and it was a very mysterious thing. He was ill for a long time. But my mother was his caregiver, and I watched her very quietly just go about her business of taking care of him. And then after he died, she married my stepfather, who was beloved and adored him. And he had epilepsy and ultimately died of complications from epilepsy. But I saw her be his caregiver. So I thought, you know what, Jane? This is not for you. Your mother is Wonder Woman, but maybe you're not, and maybe you should marry for health. There are some women that marry for all kinds of reasons, but I wanted a guy who was going to stick around. And Peter, we can't choose who we love. I ended up with Michael, and Michael informed me over dinner early on that he had Crohn's disease. And I said, what's that? Because certainly I'd never heard of it. He said, oh, nothing much, just a gastro kind of thing. It hits you in the gut. And soon after, off we go to the emergency room for my first time as a caregiver. And turns out he was diagnosed at 11, has had over 100 hospitalizations, 30 surgeries, and tons of complications which go on today. We're about to celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary, which we're going to do with a vow renewal, and I'm going to get a bouquet and a little thing for my head, and the whole works. And
that's awesome.
You know why? Because when they say in sickness and in health, they mean it. It means something.
It does.
I don't have to tell you that.
Well, yeah, actually you do. We have to remind each other of that all the time sometimes. We have to preach it to ourselves sometimes. But it does. And you've certainly have been through the grinder on this thing.
Well, then, as you mentioned, my mom, who was my absolute, mainstay in life. Just my hero in every way. She passed away. Let's see now. I can't believe it. It'll be a year in November. So I'm still not over that one, and I don't know that I ever will be. But while she had a 10-year slide into dementia, and I was her primary caregiver, and it was tough. It was terribly tough, and I'm still dealing with it. So it can be a double whammy for a lot of people. The older we get, the more caregiving is going to happen because we have elderly parents. We've got, I wrote the book initially because of my husband, and then all of a sudden I said, hey, I am the epitome of the sandwich generation here. I'm dealing with a spouse and a mom, and then there's some that deal with kids at the same time, or grandkids, or grandparents, or a neighbor, or an aunt or an uncle. It's everywhere.
Well, let me ask you a question,
yeah.
Jane. Let me go back to this thing because two questions that stood out. You said you grew up in a family of illness. I've heard, and I subscribe to this in my own life and journey, that it is caregiving. I mean, when you're dealing with somebody with an issue like chronic pain or with Crohn's disease, just a relentless affliction, it is a family illness. It affects the entire family on this. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you're absolutely right. It affects everybody because, there's a financial cost. I mean, just getting right down to it. It costs money to take care of someone you love. I can't go running off and don't want to when my husband's in pain. So my life is different. My work life is different. My friendships are different. I have a chapter in the book about friendship. Some caregivers have found, and I have too, that you really find out who your friends are. Some people do what is called stiff arming, which is, they don't really want to be around because they either don't know what to say, they don't know how to help you, they'd like to, but they don't know how.
Or it's just too messy for them.
It's too, well, I was getting to that. They think it's somehow contagious in the sense that, oh, gee, if it's happening to her, it could happen to me, and I want to avoid that. So you do become isolated, and you do get to see who your real friends are. At the same time, the silver lining of it, and I do have a whole chapter on silver linings because there are some, is that you become a better friend. There isn't a person who I wouldn't help in a crisis. I wouldn't leap to their defense if called upon or if not if called upon. So what goes around, I've learned that lesson too.
Well, let me ask you another follow-up question. This thing, when you lost your mom and you said how this has affected you, I've had a theory for some time that, and of course you don't get a break from it because you're still dealing with your husband, but
right.
I've had a theory that when a caregiver stops being a caregiver due to death, that when their loved one has passed away, and I don't know this from firsthand because my wife's still alive and very much so, but that there's a kind of a caregiver PTSD component. How does that resonate with you, with what happened with your mom?
I'm so glad you brought that up. Well, first of all, from a practical point of view, you're at particularly toward the end, you are running on adrenaline. It's almost like you're up for a sporting event. I mean, must be what athletes do. You are up at the crack of dawn, and you're there, and you're running, and you're present. And when it's all over, it gets really quiet, and your job is over. I mean, you've just lost your job for one thing. For another, you're so busy taking care of all the loose ends, taking care of a funeral, taking care of the person's affairs, taking care of every odds and end, having to do with siblings, and it's complicated, and finance. And so you don't get to grieve until it's quiet. And then it sets in. And that's when the PTSD really gets loud. And you start thinking, oh, my gosh, maybe I should have done this. Or maybe if I had 5 more minutes, this would have happened. Or, you second-guess yourself, and that's not a good thing.
Well, this is one of the missions I'm on, is to help caregivers grieve in a healthy manner, because we're going to grieve. And even in the sadness, there's still beauty and there's still joy. But if our fists are clenched with rage and resentment, we're never going to be able to do it. And so before we transition to your book a little bit, I wanted to ask you just if you got because I know somebody's listening right now who has basically gotten the phone call this week. With as many people are listening right now, I know that somebody got the call this week that the diagnosis of Alzheimer's or dementia or whatever, the call that comes in. And it's this, the average caregiver is a 49-year-old woman taking care of her widowed mother, and she's married, and she's that sandwich person. The stress on families is so palpable. Somebody just got the call. What would you say? What's the first thing you would say to that woman who just got the call, that person who just got the call?
The first thing I would say is breathe. It sounds silly.
No, it doesn't.
my journey as a caregiver, details all the mistakes that I made, and one of them was that I just was off and running. I sort of freaked out, and I was so emotional. And I let my emotions hang out there. That didn't do anybody any good, certainly not me. So the first thing I'd say is take a breath. Let's just quietly analyze what the situation is, how we feel about it. Cry if you need to cry. Crying is good. Crying is not if you're just crying and you don't understand why. But if you can attach a meaning or a focus to the tears, you'll see you can come out of this stronger. You'll see that crying didn't destroy you. It's just temporary, and it's a cathartic way of expressing an emotion. Do it privately. Do it in your car. Do it in the shower, not in front of the person you love.
I agree with that. I think that is good. That is a good piece of advice there, because I think sometimes we do wear it out so much on our sleeves. And as I tell people, my wife's, we don't know how to be reserved in some of these things, and it's important that we protect ourselves, not because we're trying to protect necessarily other people from our emotions, but my wife's a double amputee. People know she's an amputee. That doesn't mean they get to see the amputated limb. That just means they know she's an amputee, and we don't have to expose everything. And we find trusted people to do that with. And I only got a little bit of time left, and I want to make sure I talk about your book a little bit. Where can people get this book? The book is called "If You Die." If you die, I'll kill you. You better not die, or I'll kill you. Where can people get this book?
Any bookstore, Amazon, online, Barnes & Noble, anywhere books are sold.
And then if people want...
And they can go to my website, too, and find it there, janeheller.com.
janeheller.com. And you do a blog there? And
I don't.
You don't do a blog?
I do a baseball blog.
A baseball blog. I know you're a big Yankee fan, aren't you?
I am.
This is what I was going to say. You're a Yankees fan because we don't argue with results.
We don't argue. Listen, Jane, the time has flown by. We're out of it. I want you to know how much I appreciate you taking time on a Sunday afternoon to call. And janeheller.com. Please go out and take a look at this book and all the things she's done. She's just wonderful. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Peter.
Hey, listen, we'll be right back. This is the nation's #1 show for caregivers, and we're glad you're a part of it. We'll be right back.
Credit card to ride this train. It's strong and it's sudden and it's cruel.
Welcome back to the show for caregivers, about caregivers, hosted by a caregiver. I am Peter Rosenberger, bringing you 30 years. That's not 1 year. That's not 2 years. That's 30, 3 decades of experience to help you stay strong and healthy as you take care of someone who is not. It's so important that you do this. We talked about earlier. Oh, by the way, if you want to be on the show, 800-688-9522. If you join listening to the show and you say, hey, wait a minute, they're talking about me. You know what? That's why we do the show. You're why we do the show. See, caregivers struggle with 3 things, 3 I's: loss of identity, isolation, and loss of independence. Let me talk a little bit about those 3 I's before we wrap up for today. The loss of independence, you get that. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer right there. We're landlocked now. We can't come and go as we'd like to. We have somebody else whose needs require us to constantly be addressing and watching over. The isolation. Now, caregivers can feel isolated in a crowded room, and we can feel isolated on a crowded pew, for that matter. One of the most difficult and lonely times in my life was in church on Easter Sunday. I'll never forget this. It was a massive church, a huge cathedral-like church, and the full orchestra, that everybody's there and their Easter finest. And Gracie was literally struggling for life. And I slipped out to go to church. We really thought we were going to lose her. The kids were with grandparents during this time, and it was a pretty dicey situation. I slipped out to go to service, and everybody was singing about victory in Jesus and everything else, and it was everything you would want an Easter service to be, and yet in a room full of 2,000 people, I was drowning. I was dying, and I couldn't make the connection. I couldn't get past it. And I was so beaten down, I was so discouraged, and nobody knew it. Nobody knew it. And most people don't speak fluent caregiver, and they don't know the signs to look for. I do. And I'm determined now to make sure that nobody has to endure that within the sound of my voice, that they will have at least one person that recognizes, hey, I see what you're going through. And that brings me to another part about caregivers' loss of identity, is that we lose ourselves in this thing. And that's how you help a caregiver. The first thing you do is you say, hey, look, I see you. I see you. And I see the magnitude of what you're carrying. And I hurt for you. If we do nothing else but say that to a caregiver, it penetrates into that loneliness. It pushes past that loss of identity. We become invisible as we push a wheelchair. I can't tell you over the years how many people have asked me about my wife. I couldn't count that number. But I can tell you the ones that have asked about me. That's a much smaller number. And you understand that as a caregiver, don't you? This is why I'm doing the show. See, at the end of the show, I want your heart to be a little bit lighter. I want your eyes to be lifted a little bit higher. And I want you to have a path towards you making some safe decisions, some healthy decisions for you. And I want you to know that God hasn't abandoned you. God hasn't abandoned your loved one. Sometimes we say the most hurtful things to each other in the church. If you had enough faith or this or whatever. That's not what this is all about. God uses suffering all the time to accomplish something extraordinary. The question is, will we trust him in this? And I've chosen to do so, and I'm inviting you to do the same. How do we know we can trust him? Well, he stretched out his hands. And look at the nail prints. That's the scars we focus on. And sometimes we have to put our scared hand into his scarred hand. Not sometimes, all the time. And that's what we're doing as caregivers. And so I'm grateful that you're a part of this. Caregivers with Hope is the site that I've dedicated just for caregivers. I want you to go out and take a look at it. See what's available out there. I'm going to squeeze in a quick phone call as we wrap it up. It's been a busy inaugural show. John, you've done a great job. But Tim,
well, thank you, sir.
Tim is on the line. Tim, you in Nashville, or where are you?
I am in Nashville.
Oh, this is Tim in Nashville.
In on your first show. How could I miss your first syndicated show?
Tim, the caregiver stalker. He is with.
Hey, we like our stalkers.
We love our stalkers. We love our stalkers. Tim,
we have been praying for this date, and Peter, you and John have earned it.
Well, thank you,
You
Tim.
have worked so hard, and you have served selflessly so many. There are a lot of people have received hope and encouragement from you and have been equipped with tools to make it through another day, and not just to make it through another day, but to win another day. And there are people who have been blessed because their caregivers are now equipped and empowered to keep themselves healthy and keep those they're caring for in better shape. And so you have been a blessing. We've been praying for you, and we're so excited to see this day.
Well, thank you, Tim. That means an awful lot.
And highly relevant. So thank you, sincerely.
It really means a lot. We have worked towards this. We understand the value of it, and you understand it. And thank you for being such a great part of listening and engaging with the show. And, and if you're not a caregiver, you will be. And if you live long enough, you're going to need one. And if you're thinking right now as you listen to the show, wait a minute, I'm not a caregiver, but I know someone who is, tell them about the show. There's a show for caregivers now, and it's going out across the country. Salt Lake to Greensboro, North Carolina. You can listen to this show, and you don't have to be so isolated. You don't have to be so alone. And, Tim, it means a lot. That means a lot. Thank you so much for that.
Have a blessed rest of your day.
I will. Thank you. You too. Hey, listen, also, we're all about providing practical tips for fellow caregivers, too. So we're going to have, you'll get to know us a little bit more, and we'll have medical interviews on here. We have people that provide products and services like our friends at 101 Mobility. It's a great company that comes in and does all kind of modifications to your home, provides all kinds of answers, of solutions when you're bringing someone home who has an impairment, or for your car, adjusting, fixing things in your car, putting a thing to put your wheelchair on the back of the car, or whatever. There's all kinds of things these guys do, 101 Mobility, and they'll take your call. I mean, 24/7. In fact, the fellas over there, they tell me to give out their cell numbers, and so I do. And this is Cecil Rainey, 615-830-6478, 615-830-6478, and you will thank me for it, because when you bring someone to the house, it's not enough just to get them through the hospital thing. Now you got to get them home, and you got to get them into the home. And most people have one or two steps. Well, if you're wheelchair bound, one or two steps are significant. So these are the things we talk about. We're whole service here for caregivers. We're going to cover every part of your life, your health, your emotions, your lifestyle, your profession, your money, and your endurance. You put all that together, and it spells out, help me. And that's where we're going as caregivers. And lastly, I want to go back to that loss of identity that we caregivers have. We have a hard time speaking in first-person singular. First-person singular is difficult. When somebody comes up and asks, how are you doing? Well, we just got home from the hospital, or she had a bad night, or we're not doing too well. And this was driven home for me one time when I was at the piano. And I've been accompanying my wife. She's a wonderful singer. Go out to our website, and you can hear it at caregiverswithhope.com and look at some of the music she's done. But I've accompanied her for so many years, and my pastor asked me to play as people were coming into church, and just to kind of create a more reverent atmosphere for it. And I was playing all these hymns that I've known in my whole life, but I was playing just the harmonies. I was playing around the melody, and I was hearing her melody in my head. And I realized I had to go back and train myself to play the melody. And see, so many of us as caregivers, we've lost our own melody. We don't know how to speak in our own voice. We don't know how to use the I word, which is to say, I hurt, I'm tired, I'm struggling, I'm lonely, I'm mad, I am really hacked off. And we struggle with that. But you know what? Today's the day we could stop wallowing in that and start making some real healthy choices for ourselves. Today's a great day to start being a healthy caregiver. And healthy caregivers make better caregivers. You're not doing them a favor if you're trying to push a wheelchair with clenched fist. Try it sometime. Not with them in it. I mean, go out and take it out on the street by yourself and then try to push it with clenched fist. It ain't going to happen. You're going to have a wreck. We can live more peacefully with this. We can live more calmly. And dare I say it, we can live more joyfully, even while taking care of someone who deals with some harsh realities. We can do this, and we can do it together. And I am glad that you joined with us today. What a treat, John, our first nationally syndicated show.
I am over the moon, man. Absolutely.
I need a nap.
Well, I need a steak is what I need. I wore myself out. I need to replenish this protein. But seriously, thank you to all of our new affiliates.
And all you listeners, you're why I do the show. Go out to caregiverswithhope.com. We'll have the show out there. We'll have all kinds of stuff for you, all kinds of resources. Take advantage of it. I'm putting it out there. You take advantage of it. Let's be healthy together. Healthy caregivers make better caregivers. and today's a great day to start doing it. I'm Peter Rosenberger. I'll see you next week.